Hello, good morning, year 4. I hope you are all well, had a wonderful weekend and are really excited for another week of reading. So we had such a good time looking at Edward Tulane over the last few weeks, and now we are onto a new text. So I'm going to share my screen and let's have a look at what we're going to be reading this week. So we are going to be reading I Was a Rat by Philip Pullman. What I'd like you to do, have a look at the cover. What do you predict the book is going to be about? Use the pictures, use the text to help you. Pause the video now, talk to the person next to you, or just have a think by yourself. What do you think I Was a Rat by Philip Pullman is going to be about? So, hopefully you've had a chance to have a look at the cover. So what sort of things can we see? We've got a man walking in the middle of what looks like the sewers. We've got a beam of light shining down on him. So I don't know, perhaps he's fallen through a manhole and into the sewers, and he's lost down there. We can also see as well, the eagle-eyed view, we'll see this shadow over here of what looks like to be a very large rat. So let's see what the book is about. Underneath this, I've got, underneath this orange rectangle, I have got the blurb that was written on the back of the book, which gives us some more information. When a small boy turns up on Bob and Joan's doorstep, unable to say much except, "I was a rat," the kind couple adopt him. It seems strange, but Bob reads about odder things every day in his newspaper. To them, the little sunny chap is Roger, and he's trying hard to adapt to human life. But when he gets lost and ends up on the run, other people, egged on by their newspapers, are quick to see him as the monster, a rodent fiend who's sort of like an enemy or a pest, who could terrorize the town. Only a friend in a very high place could save Roger from the authorities, which is like the police force and maybe politicians potentially, who are determined to exterminate him, so to get rid of him for good. So we can already tell that, so this book, just from the blurb, seems to be about a rat that turns into a boy and is adopted by this couple, by Bob and Joan, and then is sort of made to be on the run and is being chased and terrorized by all the people in town. So it sounds like quite an interesting book, actually. So before we get started with reading this first chapter of I Was a Rat, we need to, of course, look at 8 new bits of vocabulary. So I'm going to change my screen so that you can see. Oops. There we go. Right, so the words that we're going to be looking at today are, let's start with sorely. Repeat after me, sorely. Now, sorely means very or extremely. So you might say, after my run, I was sorely tired, sorely exhausted. So it's another word for very or extremely. We quite often use it to describe someone that we miss. We say, oh, you will be sorely missed, or I sorely miss this person that maybe doesn't live near me anymore, doesn't go to our school. So the word for sorely, meaning very or extremely, our action is going to be right at the top. So we're going to show very as if it's really, really high. So sorely. Sorely. Our next word is grubby. 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 Excellent. So grubby means dirty or messy. So perhaps if you haven't showered in a while, you might be your face and your hair might be a bit grubby. It means that it's just not very clean, a bit dirty and messy. So our action for grubby, I want to imagine that you've got loads and loads of stuff on you and you're finally able to wash your grubby face. So grubby, grubby, almost like you're rubbing mud into it and making it more dirty. Grubby. Next word is crowding. 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 Very good. Now, crowding is something we, at the moment, are not doing a lot of because it means to gather together tightly. So lots of people gathering together. So maybe if something interesting happens, people would crowd around it to get a closer look. So our action, I did it sort of by accident there, is going to be crowding. Crowding, almost as if there's a load of people that are coming to surround and look at one particular thing. So crowding. Our fourth word is tattered. Tattered. Great. And tattered is an adjective which means completely torn, shredded, pulled apart, something that's in just really bad, poor condition. So, for example, the boy's work was slobbery and tattered after being ripped apart by the dog. Or you could say that someone's shoes were tattered after not having a new pair in years. So it just means completely ruined, completely torn and wrecked. So I want you to imagine that you are maybe unwrapping a present and you're ripping the paper into tatters. So tattered, tattered, as if you're clawing at something. Tattered. Right, so let's go through those first 4 words and see if we can remember the actions. So sorely. What's the action going to be for sorely? Remember, it means very or extremely. So sorely, sorely. Then we had grubby, grubby, which means dirty or messy, grubby. Crowding, 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 which means to gather together tightly. And finally, tattered, tattered, like you're ripping at something, something that's completely torn. Great, so our final 4 words. The next one is puzzled, puzzled. Very good. Now, puzzled means confused or baffled. So perhaps you're doing your work and you're puzzled by Miss Jones's fraction question. I'm really puzzled by that. I'm finding it really difficult to work out. So our action for puzzled is going to be, again, I've done it without really thinking, just that. So as if you're thinking really hard, puzzled, puzzled. Make sure you're doing all the actions with me because it's really going to help you learn them. Excellent. So our next word is errand, errand, errand. So errand means to have a quick trip for a particular purpose, or another word for a small job. So you quite often use in the phrase, I'm going to run some errands. So some errands that you could run in town. If you were going to the city centre and wanted to run some errands, what might you do? Well, you might be doing your grocery shopping. That might be one. Have a think now. What other errands, what other little jobs might you run if you're going into town? So some examples, you could go shopping, you could go to the bank if you're running an errand. You might be going to the post office or something to deliver a letter, might be an errand. So an errand is like a small job or a small trip that you make to do something. So as the expression is quite often running errands, I want you to have your sort of running man with your fingers who's really, really busy and running errands. So errand, errand. Very good. So our next word, shifting, shifting, shifting. Very good. Now, to shift something means to move or to change position. So, for example, you might shift gears in a car. If you go from gear 1 to gear 2, you're shifting gears. Or if I've been sat down for a really long time, I might need to shift myself in my seat. So it sort of just means moving myself around to get a bit more comfortable. Especially happens when you're in the cinema for a really long time. So our action for shifting, imagine you've got a gear stick in front of you that you're changing and moving it from first gear to second. So move it around, shifting, shifting in different positions. Well done. And our final word is guzzle, guzzle, guzzle. Very good. Now, guzzle is a word that you may have heard of before, which means to eat or drink something in a really greedy manner. So you're not just eating it really nicely with a mouth and fork, almost like an animal. So the hungry boy guzzled down his burger and fries. It means you're kind of chucking it into your mouth, not really chewing. So our action for guzzled, I want you to imagine that you've got a big mound of your favorite food in the world, and you are guzzling it down, just throwing it in with your hands. So guzzled. Excellent job. Right, guys. Let's have a little look at a quick recap of those. I'm going to go through them one more time. Can you remember the action for them? So this could be in any order. So let's go for grubby. Grubby. Excellent. What about tattered? Tattered. Remember, meaning completely torn. Errand, which is like a job that you run. If you're running errands? Errand. Let's have guzzle. Guzzle. Excellent. Sorely. Sorely means very or extremely, so really high up with your hand. Very, sorely. Next word, crowding. Crowding, good, which means to gather closely together or tightly around something. And then final one, what's the last one? Puzzled. I'm really puzzled. Excellent. So those are our eight words that we're going to be focusing on this week. Now, before we get into the vocab activity, think about those words, things like grubby, tattered, guzzle. What does that tell you about the character that we're going to meet, or the chapter? Grubby, tattered, guzzled. It sort of paints the idea, I don't know about you, but for me, that he may be quite, as it's about a rat, it may be quite a dirty person, someone that isn't looking after themselves, maybe hasn't eaten in a while. It was quite animalistic. But we're going to have a little look at your vocab activity first. So here's a quick recap of those words again, if you'd like to see them spelled. So sorely, grubby, crowding, tattered, puzzled, errand, shifting, and guzzle. Feel free, if there are any of those words that you're not sure of, feel free to go back. So what I would like you to do, please, insert the correct word into these sentences. So let's do the first one together. You've got a whole list of them right up here so that you can always refer to them. The children began something around the television. So what did they do? So if there's a lot of them and they're going around the television, I think of my action. What was this one again? Yeah, of course, crowding, I think works really well there. So I'm going to get, it's maybe a bit big there. Let's see if that one fits. The children began crowding around the television. Think of why they might be crowding around the television. Perhaps there's a really big sporting event on, the final of something, or everyone's favorite programs just come on. They might be crowding around the television. So what I'd like you to do, just on a piece of paper, if you can write the numbers 1 to 8, and then if you can copy out the sentences with inserting the correct word from the list above, that would be great. Okay, pause the video and come back once you've finished. Off you go. So hopefully you've had a chance to have a look at that. Let's go through the answers for these. So yes, we've got the children began crowding around the television. Please make sure you're marking these with a pencil or a different coloured pencil or pen. John was puzzled over the meaning of the letter. Please change out of those grubby clothes before you sit down to dinner. He started shifting all the books from the top shelf to the bottom shelf, so moving them around, remember? Number 5, he went on errands to the bank, the post office, and the supermarket. So those are the, remember, errands are like little jobs that you run. When she left for France, she would be sorely missed by her family. Number 7, when he saw Coca-Cola, he began to guzzle it down. And finally, the dog held the man's tattered shirt in its teeth after ripping it to pieces. So hopefully you have managed to remember those words there, and we'll be rehearsing them and practicing them throughout the week, so you'll have plenty of time to learn those. So let's go over to our text. So remember, we're reading I Was a Rat by Philip Pullman. Make sure that you're following the text on the screen, and then maybe go through again afterwards and read through yourself. So, I was a rat. Old Bob and his wife Joan lived by the market in a house where his father and grandfather and great-grandfather had lived before him. Cobblers, all of them, and cobbling was Bob's trade too. So a cobbler is someone that fixes shoes. So that's the job that their family have. Joan was a washerwoman, like her mother and her grandmother and her great-grandmother, back as far as anyone could remember. And if they'd had a son, he would have become a cobbler in his turn. And if they'd had a daughter, she would have learned the laundry trade, and so the world would have gone on. But they never had a child, whether boy or girl. And now they were getting old. It seemed less and less likely that they ever would, much as they would have liked to. One evening, as Joan wrote a letter to her niece, and old Bob sat trimming the heels of a pair of a pair of tiny scarlet slippers. Scarlet is like a dark shade of red. He was making, for the love of it, there came a knock at the door. Bob looked up with a jump. "Was that someone knocking?" he said. "What's the time?" The cuckoo clock answered him before Joan could. 10 o'clock. As soon as it had finished cuckooing, there came another knock, louder than before. Bob lit a candle and went through the dark shop to unlock the front door. Standing in the moonlight was a little boy in a page's uniform. It had once been smart, but it was sorely, remember to do the actions as we go along, sorely torn and stained, and the boy's face was scratched and grubby. "Bless my soul," said Bob. "Who are you?" "I was a rat," said the little boy. "What did you say?" said Joan, crowding behind her husband. "I was a rat," said the little boy again. "You were... Go on with you. Where do you live?" she said. "What's your name?" The little boy could only say, "I was a rat." The old couple took him into the kitchen because the night was cold and sat him down by the fire. He looked at the flames as if he'd never seen anything like them before. "What should we do?" whispered Bob. "Feed the poor little soul," Joan whispered back. "Bread and milk, that's what my mother used to make for us." So she put in some milk in a pan to heat by the fire and broke some bread into a bowl, and old Bob tried to find out more about the boy. "What's your name?" he said. "Haven't got a name." "Why, everyone's got a name. I'm Bob and this is Joan, and that's who we are, see? You sure you haven't got a name?" "I lost it. I forgot it. I was a rat," said the boy, as if that explained everything. "Oh," said Bob. "You've got a nice uniform on. Anyway, I expect you're in service, are you?" The boy looked at his tattered uniform, puzzled. "Dunno," he said finally. "Dunno what that means. I expect I am, probably." "In service," said Bob. "That means being someone's servant, having a master or a mistress, and to run errands for them. Page boys like you, they usually go alongside with the master or mistress in a coach, for instance." "Ah," said the boy. "Yeah, I'd done that. I was a good page boy. I'd done everything right." "Course you did," said Bob, shifting his chair along as Joan came to the table with a bowl of warm bread and milk. She put it in front of the boy, and without a second's pause, he put his face right down into the bowl and began to guzzle it up directly, his dirty little hands gripping the edge of the table. "What are you doing?" said Joan. "Dear, oh dear, you don't eat like that. Use the spoon." The boy looked up, milk in his eyebrows, bread up his nose, his chin dripping. "He doesn't know anything, poor little thing," said Joan. "Come to the sink, my love, and we'll wash you. Grubby hands and all, look at you." The boy tried to look at himself, but he was reluctant to leave the bowl. "That's nice," he said. "I like that." "It'll still be there when you come back," said Bob. "I've had my supper already. I'll look after it for you." The boy looked wonderstruck at this idea. He watched over his shoulder as Joan led him to the kitchen sink and tipped in some water from the kettle, and while she was washing him, he kept twisting his wet face round to look from Bob to the bowl and back again. "That's better," said Joan, rubbing him dry. "Now, you be a good boy and eat with the spoon." "Yes, I will," he said, nodding. "I'm surprised they didn't teach you any manners when you were a page boy," she said. "I was a rat," he said. "Oh, well, rats don't have manners. Boys do," she told him. "You say thank you when someone gives you something, see? That's good manners." "Thank you," he said, nodding hard. "That's a good boy. Now, come and sit down." So he sat down and Bob showed him how to use the spoon. He found it hard at first because he would keep turning it upside down before it reached his mouth, and a lot of the bread and milk ended up on his lap. But Bob and Joan could see that he was trying, and he was a quick learner. By the time he'd finished, he was quite good at it. "Thank you," he said. That's it. Well done, said Bob. Now, you come along with me and I'll show you how to wash the bowl and the spoon. While they were doing that, Bob said, "Do you know how old you are?" "Yes," said the boy. "I know that all right. I'm 3 weeks old." 3 weeks? And that is the end of the chapter. One moment. Okay, so that is the first chapter of I Was a Rat. We will be looking at that over the next, during the whole week, as well as our key vocabulary. Really well done, guys. I would recommend going back to that text and reading that by yourselves as well. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and I look forward to seeing you all tomorrow. Goodbye.